Welcome to month 7 of the Lead Dad Diaries with Skip Cherryholmes, where we're following Skip for a year as he goes from well-known touring musician to a new career where being a lead dad is as important as what he's doing for work. We're just over halfway through, and we got some big news. Neither of us can probably believe this. We didn't think this might happen. We start off. Skip, do you want to tell the big news?
I would love to. I am actually a part of the company of dads now.
That's right.
It's so awesome to have something, you go back to when I first, you and I first talked, and the thing that attracted me to the company of dads was this passion for the support of fatherhood, and it was came at a really crucial point in my life when I was making massive changes on behalf of, my family. And so, then, fast forward what 6 months later, 7 months later, and now I'm actually in it. I have an iron in this fire, and it's exciting.
We always said from the outset that we're going to chronicle your lead dad journey. And now, it goes lead dad journey into the company of dads. So super excited. And so I'm also very grateful because when we had a change in our social media person, you were the first person I called. And I was so thrilled when you said yes. So happy to have you as you were always part of the company dads, but now instead of talking once a month, we talk multiple times a week,
Mhm.
and it's fantastic. All right, let's go into our first question. Excluding getting to talk to me 3 or 4 times a week, because that would be too self-serving. Excluding that, what's been the best part of
Mm,
the past
um,
month for Skip?
well, obviously we're in the throes of fall, and that is my favorite time of year. And I think we've pushed past a lot of the pumpkin spice, which is nice. We're heading a little bit more towards the peppermint and chestnuts. But I'm really loving this. Was typically for me when as a touring musician, from the end of August until Thanksgiving, you are on bust, tour wise. You are gone all the time. And so, and even in 2020, because if you think back to 2020, whenever before it got really cold, but after we'd been around this whole thing for a little while, the late summer and early parts of fall were when people were testing the water with a little bit more outdoor activity, and they figured out the rhythm on social distancing and whatnot, but they were able to gather a little bit more. So even in 2020, I had opportunity to do a little bit more than the summer and a little bit more than the spring, obviously. So my falls have very traditionally been where I've just been gone a lot. And so this has been different. This has been, yeah, I've actually been able to dive into the reality of this season and do fun things like take my kids trick or treating and go to the state fair and um, campfires and coffee and the whole bit. Excuse me, it's been just a great experience for me, remembering back to the last episode we did when I was talking about how I relish in the small things, and I let kind of just step back and observe how much I'm enjoying it, and it's been like that so far this last month. Um, and Definitely more activities going on for the kiddos too, which is a lot more fun for me to be a part of.
Yeah, I gotta go to a follow up there. State fair. I remember state fair when I was growing up. What's your favorite animal, and do you have like a favorite family animal when you go to the state fair? Mine was
Oh,
always the llama until I realized how mean they were. They're
llamas
really
are mean.
they're mean. Yeah.
Um, so favorite animal at the state fair. I'll be honest, the now it may be different where you're at. North Carolina State Fair has a little bit to do with the animals and has a whole lot to do with the food. And that's a North Carolina
Like
thing
the
just in
barbecue, the
general.
barbecuing of the animals, is that it? Like a lot of
Very well could be, but I mean, so my wife and I joke about this all the time because I'm from California and she's from here, North Carolina. And I've made observation that North Carolinians, they found any event, any daytime event, any evening event, any morning event is founded around a meal. There has to be a meal involved. And if there is a possibility that the event itself could get in the way of the meal, you skip the event because you're not going to miss breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever the case is. Food is a huge part of just okay, well if you go out and do something, there's a meal involved somewhere in there, and sometimes that's the only thing that you do. And the state fair very well reflects that in the fact that I mean this several hundred uh food trucks
yeah.
and booths, and the competition of what's the weirdest thing that they're going to come out with this year for everybody to try. And that completely overshadows any of the agricultural exhibits or anything like that. I mean, it's a different world like that.
Well, then I have to ask, like, what is the worst but most delicious bit of food that you eat at the state fair that you would
Oh,
never eat anywhere else?
well, okay, so that's the two part of that question is what's the worst but most delicious and that you would eat not eat anywhere else.
Yeah.
And the sad part of it is that I've 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 had the worst and most delicious and then turned around and made it at home. But it had to have been the Krispy Kreme bacon double cheeseburger.
Oh my God. Brought to you by Lipitor and other cholesterol
Yeah,
medications. Like, holy
yes.
wow. All right.
I
That's a
mean, you
winner.
can't imagine it being bad because it's the sweet savory mix, right? And I like that. I mean, I've had Krispy Kreme breakfast sandwiches with sausage, egg, and cheese on them, and those are quite delicious as well. But when you've got like the whole shebang with the bacon and the lettuce and tomato and the burger and the all of that on two fluffy Krispy Kreme donuts. I mean,
Do you eat
it's
after that? Is that your only meal for the day, or do you try to eat
okay.
again later
So
on?
when I
Like
first
that's
started
like
going to the state
1,500
fair, that
calories
was an
probably.
appetizer. When I was 20, 21, 22, yeah, that was just the appetizer of the day. And now I'm like, I I can't cut all of that. It's too much. It's too much and it makes me feel so horrible. Of course, I've cleaned up my eating in general a lot in the last, 8 to 10 years. But that I remember one specific year. I wasn't doing well uh physically that year, and I went along because everybody else was going along. And all I could smell was the deep fryers. There's, hundreds upon hundreds of deep fryers, and they're deep frying Reese cups and Oreos and footballs and, basically anything that anything that you hand them, they will dip it in batter and throw it in hot oil and then serve it to you for a nominal fee.
Oh my God.
Um, and I was just like, man, the fried food, I just can't. But there are so many different booze, and I think that's the cool thing about the state fairs, the tradition. I think everybody feels that if they make a regular practice out of going to a state or county fair that is on rotation, And they have the things that they do every time they go, because it's the 1 year and the one opportunity, or one time a year rather, that they can do that, and it's nostalgic and all that. And so you know, taking my kids around to go see Smokey the Bear, and then go over here and ride this little ride and all that, I think that as the years go on, it'll play itself to be a cool tradition setter.
What's been the worst part of the past month? Was it the massive heartburn you had after having the Krispy Kreme double bacon cheeseburger, or what was the worst part of the last month?
The worst part has been, and I know the parents of young kids can understand, but the sickness that's gone around. Um, I had talking about the state fair. That we were on our way to the state fair, and Aiden had been complaining that his stomach was not well, and then that later on that day ended up turning into quite the episode of illness that then eventually spread to my wife and my little girl. And somehow I managed to uh stave off whatever it was that they had going on. And that specific week was kind of crazy, because I had uh so much work on my plate on that 1 week. um and I think it was the first week that I actually started here, quite honestly. And so, stacking all of that on top of what I had going on, I had an event at church that I was helping produce, which was a big deal. It was kind of cool. And then um trying to take care of the three of them. And man, when you're a 2-year-old little girl, or, I remember when Aiden was really young and he would get sick and they don't understand what's going on. You can't really explain to them what's going on, but they feel miserable, and it's just heartbreaking to watch them, but just be so drained of life and laying there feeling horrible. And the only thing you can really do is try to make sure they're comfortable and hydrated, and got the proper medicines and whatnot. But I mean, there's just and I know it's been going around. Everybody I talk to is like, oh yeah, well, we just passed it around here. And then sometimes it makes comes back for round two, and then that's a whole thing too. So we've been we've been dealing with that, and it's been a little bit tough.
I'm confident that what kept you from getting sick was really the Krispy Kreme double bacon cheeseburger. Because
Oh
that
yeah.
just, if you could ingest that, they're like whatever was in that, like no bugs are getting past that, no virus.
No, yeah, that's a real immune booster right there.
All right. Third question of the month. What's your best lead dad moment? What's been the best lead dad moment of the past month?
The best lead dad moment. Um, well, I feel sometimes like most well, when you're a lead dad, you have a barrage of things on a daily basis that come your way that could almost qualify lead dad moments. Um, when I've had times like helping Aiden with school has been a huge one for me, because I watch him developing so rapidly. And then he actually he'll come and he'll sit down, and he'll ask me something that is substantially above anything I thought he was paying attention to, and sit and listen intently, wanting me to uh, really go into depth with him on these things. And I'm like, I'm speaking to a little man here. And so we had a family issue, like, well, close friend issue, that opened up a conversation about um mortality, illness, and whatnot. And so he's sitting there, and it's like you don't want to scare him, and you don't want to say things that are going to, you know, be upsetting. But I'm reading his body language, and I'm getting the feeling that he isn't going to sit here and listen to a line. He came and asked a question because he wanted an answer. And so I just I said, okay, I'm gonna give it to you straight. Here's what here's what it is. And he kind of digested it, and he had a lot of follow-up questions and things that some of it I could answer and some of it I couldn't. But just to watch him so maturely, he's, you know, he's getting ready to be 6. He'll turn 6 next week. And he but he's sitting there and he's so maturely, you know, kind of processing information as I'm giving it to him, and then correlating it to other things that he actually does understand, to make sure that he's understanding this in the same way. And that development piece is just, I was always wondering before I even had kids. I was like, what's it going to be like to watch somebody learn? What's it going to be? And in the way that it's not, it's different when you're learning the core fundamentals of life. When you learn how to walk and when you learn how to talk, what's it going to be like to watch somebody develop these fundamentals that later on they will use massively, obviously. But also, what is it going to be like? How will I know as a dad when it's time to talk about certain things, when it's not, what is too much, how far is too far, how many times am I going to make that mistake of either not giving enough information or giving way too much information, and learning that sensitivity. um and I can most certainly see and feel that my being home and being present these last several months has given me a better understanding of where he's at, where his level of learning is, where his personality is. And he's so yeah, when he's come at me with some fairly heavy stuff, and I know that there's another conversation that he's been dropping hints about that lean more towards friendship and companionship, and maybe somebody that he's either taken a fancy to or is just curious. I'm not ready for that conversation yet. I'm like,
Not at
you gotta,
6. Come on, not at 6.
not
Jeez.
at 6. And I don't, so I, but he's a very emotionally intelligent young man.
Yeah.
And so I don't really think that he is really in a place to mean anything by it, but I think he's just genuinely curious. He's discovering that there is more to life than the surface that he has understood, and he's not scared to dig deeper. That's a very interesting thing to watch somebody go through.
I remember our middle daughter, who is makes friends really easily, and this was like pre-K, and she had just found this boy who was like the youngest of 4 boys, and I don't know if he had a prayer. Like it just like she decided that he was going to be her boyfriend, and he just
Mm.
kind of came along with her, which is pretty cute when you're that age. And we would see him out. Like I remember one holiday, it was sort of Christmas Eve dinner, and they happened to be the same place where we were. And she went and she found him, and she grabbed his hand and tugged him along, and whatever they were talking about, who knows? But he just, he went along with it, and it was sweet. So
Yeah, it is, but also doubling on that, I see his development in the term of caring and understanding what it's the reality and the role of being a big brother. And like I see, yeah, him and his sister, they pick at each other, and that's to be expected. But he has a genuine caring heart and caring desire uh for her and for her well-being. And even to see, when she's when they're playing with other kids and she's getting maybe overlooked or knocked around, he's not like, oh well, that's my sister, I'm going to go out hang out with my friends. He's actually attentive, very attentive to her and making sure that she's looked after, and that's really cool. And I have
Yeah.
to think that he just his in his observation of somebody who's delicate and somebody who is, maybe uh because she's the younger one, and they're, whatever the case is, he is wanting to make sure she's not left behind. She's a part of him. And when she was sick and he was on the mend here not long ago, um he wanted to make sure she was comfortable. He wanted to make sure she was taken care of. He wasn't hogging all of the attention from mom
Yeah.
or myself. He was understanding. He was like, okay, I get it. I understand. Now is not the time to push buttons and be a problem. And so I don't know. I've like I said, I've always been super curious since I was a young adult what it would be like to watch a human being develop, and actually witnessing it and being home on a very consistent basis to witness it and to be involved in it is like ultimate dad status to me. I'm loving it.
That's awesome. It's a great story. Really great story. Now we're gonna go from something that's sweet and deep to what's been your most challenging lead demo? What's been the moment where you're like, gosh, I wish I could go back on the road. Like I get out of it. What's been the most challenging thing?
So I honestly haven't really had that urge. I would have thought so by now. As far as, and I know this doesn't really, I'll head into the question, but just since you brought it up, um, I miss my guys as far as like the bandmates, because we've always been really close, and I still talk to them on a consistent basis. So it's not like we've parted, but it's weird to have not actually seen any of them in person in several months. Uh, we are planning on actually going in and maybe tracking a couple of songs just for fun. So there'll be some new music released on the horizon. And I'm excited more about the fellowship of that than I really, the music will be great, and I'm excited to be creative and all of that. Uh, but I actually think I'm just more excited to be a part of the creativity with the guys and have that. But as far as oh hey, yeah, it's time to see if there's a way I can get away again. I haven't I've always been looking for opportunities like, okay, well, if I have an opportunity to go do something, is there a chance I could bring my family along? You know, can I incorporate them in some way, shape, or form? And sometimes it works out that I can't, and most of the time it works out that I can. Um, and sometimes I just tell people, look, if if you want me, it's a package deal. My family's got to come too. So if you can accommodate that, then yeah, let's make something happen. So uh I just that's just been it's been a true joy of mine. And I love that my kids are pretty easygoing when it comes to bouncing around and traveling and going and visiting and doing this and that, because if they hated the car or whatever the case was, it'd make it a lot tougher. Um, but going into, you know, your question about the worst, um, it's interesting because I'm having a hard time even really labeling something as the worst. I mean,
It's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing
no,
at all.
it's not a
No.
bad thing. Obviously, having to care for sick kids is a tough thing to do, especially if your kids are sick and your spouse is sick. Then you've got a lot going on there. But I mean, there are a lot worse things. Uh, that doesn't really phase me a whole lot as far as that goes. I'm having a hard time really thinking. Um, what is
No,
the
no, fine. Skip it. Like that's it. There's
yeah?
nothing wrong. Like you don't have to have that moment. So then you go to our last question. We always wrap up with this, and that's, any lessons learned, you know, two Krispy Kreme, bacon, cheese, bacon. That's too many, or what? You
Yeah,
have
yeah,
to
I'd
one in
say
the
that
morning, one in the afternoon. You got to space it
you
out.
got to
What?
space it out, and only maybe once a year would probably be, at most. Honestly, I just don't recommend it at all. It's not safe. It's not safe. Um, uh, Lessons learned. Um, and this, I guess this would be a good lesson, and I think it's just something good to keep in the forefront because it ties into something that I was just talking about. Uh, Anytime that I have felt like I've been supremely overwhelmed, or maybe just on the fritz, as parents sometimes can get, whether it be work related, parental related, or whatever the case is, I find myself, and it's a good practice. I look at the calendar, I look at the calendar day, and I think, okay, in a previous life, i.e., touring musician, gone all the time and all that. In a previous life, what would I be having to deal with right now? And when that list starts to populate, especially in the cons column, I realize that whatever it is that I'm hyper stressed or frustrated about, it is the best possible situation I could be in. And so having that practice of, okay, being thankful, being grateful that, you know, what it is that you're dealing with isn't as bad maybe as it may seem. You definitely need to take some time and clear your head every once in a while. I've talked about that on the podcast before too. It's self-care is very important, and it keeps your endurance up. But I think also that reflection has been really solid for me, uh, because when I think about, well, I'd be I got to do something really cool with Adeline experiencing her first real trick or treating over Halloween, and how excited she was, and how she her mind was just blown at the idea of knocking on people's doors getting candy. And she was the most precious thing. My children dressed up as Bowser and Princess Peach, and that was just, it was so sweet. But I thought to myself, I was like, there have been times I literally have left on several tours, either Halloween night or the week prior, or several weeks prior, and still hadn't come home, and having to experience those moments over FaceTime for maybe a minute or two. Um, Same with some of the more important questions, the conversations I was speaking about with my son. I don't have to do those over the phone like I did. I don't have to wait until I get home celebrating. Like I said, his birthday's coming up. His first birthday, I was in San Francisco, California. I'll never forget it. I was getting ready to do a show in San Francisco, California, and so the most I had for him was a FaceTime call and a gift that I had left at home, and I wasn't going to be home for another 3.5 weeks. And so was, I was gone almost the entire month of November. Well, I was gone the whole month of November. Um, and so by the time I got home, it's time we've moved on. Um, so I think about those things, and I think about, maybe I am feeling a little overwhelmed at whatever is in front of me right this moment. And in the grand scheme of things, this really isn't that big of a deal, because I could be 3,000 miles away doing XYZ, missing out on ABC, and I'm not. So keep that reflection and that thankfulness as a piece of what you do in your daily, and that's that I've loved it. It's been a huge thing for me, and I don't know who that was, but apparently.
Oh, child. That's an amazing way to end. Thank you, Skip. That's month 7, folks, of Lead Dad Diaries with Skip Cherryholmes, who also is our new and fantastic social media director. Tune in next month for number 8. Let's see. It's gonna be great. He's got the Company Dad's mug up there. I love it. Thank you, Skip.
Thank you.